Let's continue in our review of these fundamentals for the Sunni intellectual. And let's take a look at our table of contents here. So we covered the introduction, we covered the book of knowledge, wherein we talked about necessary knowledge and inferred knowledge. That's all clear for you by now, inshallah. Hopefully crystal clear. And also has been incorporated into your own clockwork and started to be a part of you and your thought process. We talked about the causes of knowledge. The senses cause knowledge, accurate news causes knowledge, the mind causes knowledge. And we talked about the types of accurate news, the mutawatir and the news from a prophet. We talked about the functions of the mind, intuition and deduction, and we covered some benefits there also. And then we got into the book of ignorance, starting with speculation. We talked about what speculation is. You're surmising that something is right. Your supposition, you're supposing that something is right. You're giving credence and weight to the correctness of something, although it could be incorrect even according to you, but you don't think it's incorrect. And then we talked about legal ijtihad from there, because then we talked about ijtihad, because ijtihad involves this speculation here. So we talked firstly about legal ijtihad, which is what the mujtahids do, like Ash-Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa. And we talked about ijtihad for the qibla. And we talked about ijtihad for verifying news, which, by the way, the scholars of hadith don't usually call that ijtihad, though it is an ijtihad. They usually call that tasheeh and tad'if. Tasheeh, that means authenticating, and tad'if means depreciating, yani weakening, deeming news weak, unreliable. But it is ijtihad. The science of fiqh has ijtihad, and the science of hadith has ijtihad, though it's not usually called ijtihad. And there's a third science that has ijtihad, which is nahu, the grammar. There are mujtahids in there. And now we want to talk about something very important. Since we're talking about ijtihad, we want to talk about this. When ijtihad is called a ta'wil, and ta'wil here means a misapplication. When ijtihad is referring to, when they use the word ijtihad, and they are referring to a blunder. Now, that's where we are. This topic, I went back and forth in my mind. Where to put it? Should I put it with all these other cases of ijtihad that we were talking about? Or should I put it under the section for delusion? Delusion, being delusional. Because now we're talking about somebody who made ijtihad and he really arrived at a delusion. It's not knowledge. He thinks he arrived at knowledge, yes, but he didn't. Really, he's making a blunder. And this is very important because a lot of brothers and sisters, they think that just because the word ijtihad is used somewhere, that it means that the issue at hand is valid. That's not the case. So let's see what we have here. So there's still the important case of someone having a misunderstanding of the sacred law while trying to arrive at the truth. A misunderstanding. What Ash-Shafi'i does and Abu Hanifa and Malik, when they make ijtihad, and they could be right or they could be wrong. If they're right, they get 2 rewards, and if they're wrong, they get 1 reward. There's no misunderstanding here. We're not going to say they have misunderstanding, they have blunder, or something like that. they have what someone might call a professional opinion, being top judges. A mujtahid like a Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa, they are basically judges, but judges of the highest degree. So we're not going to say when they make ijtihad and they might be right or they might be wrong, that if they were wrong, which we can't even reach, we don't even know that they were wrong. We can't prove they were wrong. We're not going to say they have a blunder and that they are misconstruing. We can't even prove that they're wrong. But sometimes someone makes an ijtihad and he is definitely wrong. And even sinful, not just wrong, even sinful. And maybe even a kafir. So I thought, let's put it here under all these other cases of ijtihad, uh, just for the benefit of understanding that this ijtihad, just because you're making ijtihad, doesn't mean you are safe. So there's still the important case of someone having a misunderstanding of the sacred law while trying to arrive at the truth. We have a lot to cover here, actually. So if you need me to repeat anything, please feel free to ask. And if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down or to repeat. But if you can hold your questions, if you can, then hold them till the end so I can try to cover all of this tonight. Among the documents about this case of putting forth an effort to just to arrive at a blunder, a blatant blunder, among the documents about this case being called Ijtihad is the saying of Shamsuddin al-Ramli. He's a Shafi'i. In his explanation of Minhajul Talibin, that's one of An-Nawawi's books. In the beginning of the Book of Apostasy, he said, and this is only one citation, he said, فَلَا أَثَرَ لِسَبْقِ لِسَانٍ أَوْ إِكْرَاهٍ وَاجْتِهَادٍ وَحِكَايَةِ كُفْرٍ. So he's continuing from something he was saying. And then he said here, so therefore there's no effect. He means there's no blasphemy from the slip of the tongue, nor compulsion, nor an ijtihad, which here means a misunderstanding or misconstruing, and citing blasphemy, like to say, Fulan said, I hate God. So you can't just say, I hate God only. That's going to be blasphemy. But when he cites it and he says, Fulan said, then he protected himself from blasphemy. There's no effect here because of the citation. Or when his tongue slips. So he said, out of excitement, Oh Allah, you are my slave and I am your Lord. He meant to say, I am your slave and you are my Lord. But he was so excited his tongue slipped. There's no effect here. He doesn't commit blasphemy. Or compulsion, when someone put the gun to his head and told him, disbelieve in Muhammad, or I'm going to put your brains on the sidewalk. And so he says, for example, I disbelieve in Muhammad. And really he believes in Muhammad and he hates what he's saying and he only did it to save his life. Then there's no effect here. He doesn't commit blasphemy. And Al-Ramli said, Wajtihad. And also when he makes an ijtihad, there's no effect. And ijtihad here means misunderstanding or misconstruing. But that's not absolute. This statement here is not absolute about that ijtihad will save you from blasphemy. It's not absolute. And we have the documents for that. The reason for me giving you this citation right here is just to give you a quote where a scholar is using the word ijtihad, this is one quote out of many, where he's using the word ijtihad and he means a blunder, a blatant blunder that has no way to be right and could even be blasphemy, yani. It could be even blasphemy sometimes, some ijtihad that someone made. So that's the purpose of the citation here. And it's not as open, really, as what he said, because sometimes the ijtihad will not save the person from blasphemy. Someone with a misunderstanding does not blaspheme. That's what Ar-Ramli's saying here. And what's missing is here, unless his misunderstanding pertain to the undisputable matters. And that's what some of the scholars said when they commented on what Ar-Ramli said. Some of them commented on this statement of Ar-Ramli. They said, it's not mutlaqan, laysa mutlaqan, not absolutely the misunderstanding will protect you from blasphemy. But I didn't want to put all those citations here because I don't want to make this section here very heavy and wordy and put a lot of names and all of that. I just want to give you the information so that it's clear for you. So here you have a citation of the word ijtihad being used not like what you might usually encounter. And it's important for you to know this difference here so that you don't get confused like a lot of people do about some things. Someone with a misunderstanding does not blaspheme unless his misunderstanding pertains to the undisputable matters. So there is a way he could blaspheme even though he's making ijtihad. Then he's not excused, like the misconception, of those who said that the world is beginningless, like Ibn Taymiyyah. He's amongst those who said, he actually said, types of things in the world are beginningless. That's what he said. Types of things are beginningless. Still blasphemy. And even though someone arrived at this end, that the world is beginningless, or that types of things in the world are beginningless, even though someone arrived at this by some ijtihad that he made, he still fell into blasphemy, because believing that something other than Allah is beginningless is unexcusable blasphemy. Your ijtihad will not save you from blasphemy here. That's why it says, unless his misunderstanding pertained to the undisputable matters. Something other than God being beginningless, this is undisputable that's blasphemy. No ijtihad will save you there. And anthropomorphism, believing that God is like a man. No ijtihad is going to save a person here. So when a Wahhabi brings ayah after ayah after ayah, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, Yadullah, etc., 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 Wajhullah, and etc., etc. And then he says, therefore, these are attributes of Allah, and his mistake is to say, that are taken by their apparent meanings. And it's his mistake also to say, and if you don't take them by their apparent meanings, then you are denying them. And no one can say correctly, this one, he didn't commit blasphemy because he was attempting to arrive at the truth. He was using ayahs of the Quran, and yes, he's mistaken, but he was using ayahs of the Quran and hadiths of the Prophet. And this led him to think that Allah is some spatial being existing in dimensions and existing in time and moving back and forth, etc. So this ijtihad here that led the person to liken Allah to the creations will not save him from blasphemy. Also, believing in Musaylimah al-Kadhab, who claimed prophethood. Whatever a person did to think this man was a prophet, that doesn't save him. And the Murji'ah, the exonerators, they are the ones who exonerate all believers from punishment. They don't believe that Allah tortures believers. They said sins are not harmful while having belief, just as good deeds are not beneficial while having blasphemy. So this is a qiyas on their part. Qiyas. Qiyas is a type of ijtihad. It's a comparison. They said, if a kafir does good deeds, will he get reward for it? We say, no, he wouldn't get reward. They say, exactly. And likewise, if a believer commits a sin, he will not have torture for it. We say, look, that's blasphemy. If he says, well, how that's blasphemy? Say, because the Prophet ﷺ said, Sinfani min ummati laysa lahuma nasibun fil Islam. There are two groups from my nation who have no share in Islam. Al-Qadariyatu wal-Murji'ah, the destiny deniers and the exonerators. So these are some cases where someone might have put some effort, and whatever effort he put, whatever he used as proofs, got him to these ends. And if this is where he ended up, and any of these points here is where he ended up, he's a blasphemer, despite that he was deducing and concluding. His ijtihad will not save him. They only said these things out of ijtihad and ta'wil of some texts outside of their contexts, and they were not excused. So, examples of not blaspheming by misinterpretation. Yani, what are some examples where a Rumli statement applies? We gave a Rumli statement, and the first thing we gave is where it doesn't apply. What are some cases where a Rumli statement does apply, where the ijtihad, because the person made ijtihad, he didn't fall into blasphemy? Examples of not blaspheming by a misinterpretation include the ijtihad of those who withheld the zakat during the era of Abu Bakr, claiming it was only obligatory during the messenger's lifetime. So that's an invalid creed. That's a deviated creed. They believe that the obligation of zakat was nullified, and it was only in effect during the messenger's lifetime, and that by the messenger's passing, zakat became inapplicable. That's a deviated creed. That's a denial of one of the 5 most important matters of Islam, in fact. So you might say, that's not blasphemy? Denying zakat? I thought we learned that denying zakat is blasphemy. Yes, denying zakat is blasphemy. But in this particular case, why these ones didn't commit blasphemy? Because of the nature of their misunderstanding. The companions did not charge them with blasphemy for that because of how they misunderstood this ayah. Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 103. خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها وصل عليهم إن صلاتك سكن لهم. Take a charity from their money that purifies them, O Muhammad, and make supplication for them. Surely your supplication is a mercy for them. Or we can take out A. Surely your supplication is mercy for them. So, how they arrived at that blunder? They said, look at the ayah. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Take a charity from their money. Oh Muhammad, that's addressed to Muhammad. Here. Oh Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they're saying this ayah addresses the Prophet. خُذْ أنت, ay ya Muhammad, take, O Muhammad, a charity, sadaqatan. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Take a charity from their money, O Muhammad. their monies. A charity that purifies them, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ, and make supplication for them, and pray for them, O Muhammad. So they're saying, the Prophet in this ayah, he was commanded to take the charity from their monies and to supplicate for them when they pay it. So they say, when he passed away, can he take the money from them? No. Can he make supplication for them? No. That's what they say. They say, just like the supplication is cut off by his death, also the zakat was cut off by his death. So the Sahaba, they didn't deem these people as kuffar for this misinterpretation of the ayah. Yani, it's because of the misinterpretation of the ayah. That means the Sahaba didn't deem them obstinate here. The Sahaba didn't say, you are kuffar because you are being obstinate in denying the zakat that is confirmed in the religion. If they were being obstinate, then they would be kuffar. But they weren't being obstinate here. They were misunderstanding an ayah. In a way, they were misunderstanding it in a way that's plausible. It is still a misunderstanding regardless. This blunder does not save them even from a sin. It does save them from blasphemy, though, but not even from a sin. They're still sinful here. And Abu Bakr fought them. Also, another example. The misconstruers of God's word. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Are you going to stop? Are you going to cease? Are you going to desist? Yani, stop what? Drinking. Are you going to stop drinking wine? So those misconstruers of this ayah, how they misunderstood this ayah, they took it as a choice rather than a prohibition. Because it's posed as a question, they took it as a choice. So they legalized and drank wine. Umar ibn al-Khattab did not judge them as blasphemers here, in this case, but he still punished them. He said, "Ijliduhum thamanina thamanin." Lash them 80 times each. فَإِنْ عَادُوا فَاقْتُلُوهُمْ. And if they return to legalizing it after this, because now it's confirmed for them what's right, execute them. Okay. So there's two cases right there, out of also some other cases, where someone made ijtihad and he was not deemed as a kafir. The Shaykh said in the Sirat, this case has been expressed by some as ijtihad, and some have called it ta'wil. Among those who use the term ta'wil is the Hafiz, Faqih, and Shafi'i Sirajuddin al-Bulqini. Then there's some other words here that I removed because a little bit far from our point here. So that's why there's an ellipses here. The Sheikh said, and some explainers of Minhajul Talibin have expressed it as ijtihad. So same thing. They talk about the same thing. Sometimes they called it ijtihad and sometimes they called it ta'wil. And both expressions, whether you want to call it an ijtihad or you want to call it a ta'wil, must be properly restricted. Both expressions must be properly restricted. This is of the utmost importance here. So that you don't excuse someone who's not excused, and the reason why you're excusing him is in the name of an ijtihad. The Sheikh said, from here, it is known that not everyone who misunderstands is protected from blasphemy by his misunderstanding. So let no thinker think that that is absolute, because generalizing in that, yani, making that absolute, saying is the case that it is absolute, and that he does not blaspheme. No one blasphemes when ijtihad is involved. Sheikh is saying, if you think that's absolute and you generalize there, that is a disbanding and exiting from the religion, a disbanding of and an exiting from the religion in itself. That would be blasphemy in itself. To think that any ijtihad, any and all ijtihad saves a person from blasphemy always. Sheikh saying that's blasphemy itself. And oh, scrupulous Muslim. What does scrupulous mean? Thorough Muslim. Meticulous Muslim. Let this help you understand what Al-Ash'ari meant when he talked about the ijtihad of those who stood against Imam Ali. May Allah honor his face. The jurist and theologian Ibn Furak, in the book Maqalat al-Ash'ari, the positions of al-Ash'ari, that's the meaning of this title, he logged. So here's a verbatim Arabic with translation. وكان يقول في أمر الخارجين عليه والمنكرين لإمامته. Al-Ash'ari used to say about the matter of those who rebelled against Ali and those who denied or objected to his rulership. What did Al-Ash'ari used to say? إنهم كانوا على الخطأ فيما فعلوا. They were indeed upon a mistake in what they did. ولم يكن لهم أن يفعلوا ما فعلوا. And they did not have the right to do what they did. من إنكار إمامته والخروج عليه. What they did of denying his rulership and rebelling against him. Now, what's coming is that he's going to say that there was some ijtihad involved. Where you're going to make a blunder here is when you don't take this first statement by what it really means. Here, they were indeed upon a mistake in what they did. Here, mistake here does not mean the one who made it ijtihad and he gets one reward, he was mistaken and he gets one reward. This is not what he's talking about here. Because he said right after that, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ أَنْ يَفْعَلُوا مَا فَعَلُوا. And they did not have the right to do what they did. So any person who doesn't want to say what's right here, he's not going to acknowledge what these words really mean. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ أَنْ يَفْعَلُوا مَا فَعَلُوا. They did not have the right to do what they did. مِنْ إِنْكَارِ إِمَامَتِهِ وَالْخُرُوجِ عَلَيْهِ. What they did of denying his rulership and rebelling against him. Then we have some ellipses here. So that's because there were some words, I removed them. The reason I removed them is because I want to focus on what he's saying about ijtihad. What I removed doesn't affect the meaning of what he's saying here, but it's just going to make it longer if I put it here, and it's going to take us away from what we're trying to focus on. So I just removed it and put ellipses there. So with something omitted here, Ibn Furak said that Al-Ash'ari said, فَأَمَّا طَلْحَةٌ وَالزُّبَيْرُ فَإِنَّهُمَا خَرَجَا عَلَيْهِ. And concerning Talha and Az-Zubayr, they did indeed rebel against him. So if you learn fiqh, then you know that the words of faqih, when you say kharaja ala al-imam, kharaja ala al-imam, that means that's haram. These words right here, this means haram. These words right here, this means that's a sin. Even though he's going to use the word ijtihad, these words right here means it's a sin, because that's haram. Al-khuruj ala al-imam al-adil. Insurrection against the just ruler. That's haram. And Al-Ash'ari said, فَإِنَّهُمَا خَرَجَا عَلَيْهِ. They did indeed rebel against him. وَكَانَ فِي ذَلِكَ مُتَأَوِّلَيْنِ مُجْتَهِدَيْنِ. And in that, each one, both of those two, each one was a mujtahid muta'awwil. So, when we talk about this issue with some people, they're going to say, all what you have established is debunked by this word right here, mujtahid. He said right here they were mujtahids. They're going to cling to this, and that's it. This word mujtahid right here, for them, nullifies all of what Al-Ash'ari is really saying here, because really of small idea of ijtihad that they have. So he said, وَكَانَ فِي ذَلِكَ مُتَأَوِّلَيْنِ مُجْتَهِدَيْنِ. They were, each one of them was, both of them were a mujtahid. Each one was a mujtahid muta'awwil. And what it means here, by the context of what he's saying, is he was a misconstruing mujtahid. He was making an ijtihad that was out of place. يَرَيَانِ ذَلِكَ صَوَابًا. Seeing that as correct, yani, they did think they were doing something right, though. So they would say, look, says he was mujtahids. Look, says they saw it as correct. بِنَوْعٍ مِنَ الْإِجْتِهَادِ. Look, says that, what the person's going to say, it says they made ijtihad. This part, بِنَوْعٍ, they're going to ignore that part. I'm telling you that out of experience, not out of assuming. And he said, look, he said, they made ijtihad. He said, بِنَوْعٍ مِنَ الْإِجْتِهَاد, which it means they saw that was correct by some sort of ijtihad. They saw what they were doing as correct by some kind of ijtihad they were making. That's what he says. He didn't say they just made ijtihad. He said it's some kind of ijtihad. When you take the context of what he's saying here into consideration, what he already said and what he's going to say that we didn't read yet, then if you know that the word ijtihad has more than one application, the scholars sometimes they even use it for someone who's dead wrong. If you know that, if you know the scholars sometimes use the word ijtihad for someone who's dead wrong, and then you see a statement like this, then you're going to know how to direct the word of ijtihad there. That's why really some of these people who talk about this issue, I am surprised about them sometimes. Some of them. Why? Not all of them, some of them. Because some of them have studied. Some of them have studied. They're not ignorant. So it is surprising that someone who studied Sharia, when he reads this excerpt here, he doesn't understand that Al-Ash'ari is talking about something that's a wrongdoing. And what makes him not understand that Al-Ash'ari is talking about a wrongdoing here is the fact that he's using the word ijtihad. For someone to be, for example, a sheikh, and just because of the existence of the word ijtihad, he cannot conceive all of what Al-Ash'ari is saying here, that's surprising to me. He might have a cloak, it has the leffa on his head, the red fez with the white wrap around it, and maybe he graduated from Egypt, or maybe he graduated out of Syria. A lot of them come out of Syria. And he can't understand this issue. He's supposed to be a person of knowledge. What else did Ibn Furak log about Al-Ash'ari? Al-Ash'ari said, وَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ مِنْهُمَا خَطَأً. And that was indeed a blunder on their part. So they're going to say, yeah, it was a khata, means they get one reward. That's not the type of khata al-Ash'ari is talking about here. Not to mention that al-Ash'ari has a terminology that's known to be his terminology, that he says khata and he means sin. Al-Ash'ari says khata means mistake, and he means sin. Some people, they say, oh yes, khata, he says khata, yeah, it's a mistake. It's the type of mistake that gets them one reward. No, no, it's not. And then the quote continues, وَإِنَّهُمَا رَجَعَا عَنْ ذَلِكَ, and indeed both of them retracted that. They retracted it. That part also, in my experience, the people who argue the wrong thing, they don't mention the fact that they retracted this. They just say they made ijtihad, they were wrong, they get their reward, and that's it. And they say, and you shut your mouth. And what else Ibn Furak logged about al-Ash'ari? وَنَدِمَا, and they regret it. So right there, this part, and they regretted that, nadima, they had remorse. In my experience, the people who talk about this issue wrongly, they don't never say this, because why they would have remorse? For what reason? وَأَظْهَرَ التَّوْبَةِ, and they displayed repentance. Why would they display repentance for doing something that's rewardable? Why would someone have regret and display repentance for doing what is rewardable? Because when you do something that is rewardable, that means you are performing worship. So why would someone regret and repent from doing rewardable worship? وَمَاتَا تَائِبَيْنِ مِمَّا عَمِلَا, and they both died repentant from what they did. So all these words right here, and maybe some of you, you know what I'm saying, that when some people present this issue, they don't say these extra parts here. All they say is they made an ijtihad. Look, al-Ash'ari said, كَانَ بِنَوْعٍ مِنَ الْإِجْتِهَادِ. And the way they're going to translate it is, al-Ash'ari said they made ijtihad. While really it means, al-Ash'ari said they made some kind of ijtihad. Which is not appropriate though. That's what he's saying, really. But they didn't understand what al-Ash'ari was saying. Because they weren't trying to, really. They were trying to defend something. In the process of trying to defend something, then they weren't able to understand what al-Ash'ari was saying. Ibn Furak continues, وَكَذَلِكَ كَانَ يَقُولُ فِي حَرْبِ مُعَاوِيَةٍ, and likewise, he used to say about Muawiyah's warfare, إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ مِّنْهِ, that it was indeed an ijtihad on his part. So, same thing. They're going to say, Al-Ash'ari said, كَانَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ مِّنْهِ, كَانَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ مِّنْهِ. They're going to say to us, why you can't get it through your skulls? He made ijtihad. But what Al-Ash'ari said right after that, وَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ خَطَأً, and that was a mistake. And he doesn't mean a rewardable mistake here. He means a sin. And what else he said? وَبَاطِلًا, and it was illegal. Batil means invalid. Invalid. وَمُنْكَرًا, and objectionable. Munkar means haram. Munkar. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Any one of you who sees a munkar, y'all know what munkar means. Y'all know what munkar means. Any one of you who sees a munkar, then let him stop it with his hand, etc. Till the end of that hadith. So if someone's going to present this to you in the wrong way, and in such a way that they might not even read the rest of this quote to you. They're just going to say right here, وَكَذَلِكَ كَانَ يَقُولُ فِي حَرْبِ مُعَاوِيَةَ أَنْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِاجْتِهَادٍ مِّنْهِ. That's it. I saw that. not lying on them. I even saw someone who produced this entire Arabic quote right here. The Arabic was present, but in his translation, this part that I'm now clarifying for you was missing. And then when I told him why you didn't translate this part, then and this was all by text. That's why you need to be mindful when you want to debate with somebody by text. It's easy to dodge when you're texting. This guy dodged and dipped and dodged and dodged and dodged. All it did was keep repeating the question, keep repeating the question, keep repeating the question. He would not answer me for a very, very, very long time. And he even said to me, why you are nitpicking about some irrelevant words? That's what he said to me. So that's why I knew he was a scoundrel and that he was a liar on the religion. And I hate that person for the sake of Allah. May Allah give him what he deserves. Al-Ash'ari said here, وَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ خَطَأً وَبَاطِلًا وَمُنْكَرًا وَبَغْيًا. And it was mutiny. It was baghi. It was mutiny. على معنى أنه خروج يعني baghi means transgression. It was transgression. If you want, I could put the word transgression there. I'm going to put the word transgression there. It was a transgression. على معنى أنه خروج عن إمام عادل, meaning that it was insurrection, mutiny against a just imam. That means it was haram. And then he said, فأما خطأ طلحة والزبير. As for the khata of Talha and Az-Zubayr, so khata means mistake. But in Al-Ash'ari's terms, he used the word khata to mean sin. So that's why it says here, as for the sinful mistake of Talha and Az-Zubayr, فَكَانَ يَقُولُ, Al-Ash'ari used to say, إِنَّهُ وَقَعَ مَغْفُورًا, that it is verified, the sin is verified, but forgiven. It's verified, but forgiven. وَقَعَ مَغْفُورًا, وَقَعَ means it happened. مَغْفُورًا means but forgiven though. So that's what we say. We say it was a sin, but they were forgiven. Those people are saying there was no sin here. This was rewardable. This is their ijtihad. They are doing the type of ijtihad we're talking about right now. The one that's a blunder and is dead wrong by using some references that they found. Al-Ash'ari used to say that it is verified but forgiven by virtue of the confirmed news. لِلْخَبَرِ الثَّابِتِ عَنِ النَّبِيِّ أَنَّهُ حَكَمَ لَهُمَا بِالْجَنَّةِ, by virtue of the confirmed news from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he judged that they shall both go to heaven unscathed. They shall both enter the garden unscathed. Yani, when we look at the proofs, what's the judgment of insurrection against the imam, just imam? Haram, major sin in fact. But what's the judgment of the 10 companions who got the good news of going to paradise? That this is confirmed. All those 10 shall enter the garden unscathed. So when we put those two facts together, then we know that even though what they did was haram, it was forgiven for them. There's an ellipsis here because I removed also here, what I removed here is what he said about Aisha. I removed it because he didn't talk about Ijtihad in particular. So it's relevant, but I just took it out because I want to focus on the issue of Ijtihad. I don't even, it's not my point here that I want to talk about Muawiyah and Talha and Zubayr and Aisha. No, the real focus here is the usages of Ijtihad. We talked about the Ijtihad Shar'i done by the top mujtahids. We talked about Ijtihad for the Qibla, which is important for you to know. We talked about Ijtihad for verifying news. And as an extra benefit, there's another kind of ijtihad that really is important for you to know. So you don't think that just because the word ijtihad is being used, that it means that someone is exonerated. Sometimes, because there's an ijtihad involved, he won't be committing blasphemy and he's still going to be sinful. And sometimes he's still going to even commit blasphemy despite his ijtihad. Depends on the issue. So then Ibn Furak said that Al-Ash'ari said, وَأَمَّا خَطَأُ مَنْ لَمْ يُبَشِّرْهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بِالْجَنَّةِ فِي أَمْرِهِ فَإِنَّهُ مُجَوَّزٌ غُفْرَانُهُ وَالْعَفْوُ عَنْهُ. Intaha. And concerning the sinful mistake of anyone to whom the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not give the glad tidings of going to heaven, his being forgiven and pardoned is indeed possible. Yani he could still be forgiven, but we don't have religious document to confirm that his confirmed sin, it fell forgiven. Yani it's a sin verified, but we've also verified, we know for sure by putting the religious proofs together that it's forgiven. The 10 who got the good news of going to paradise, they have proof for us to say they are forgiven. Not to mention they repented anyway, but they are forgiven. And Aisha also has the same proof. I just took what he said about Aisha out just to focus on the ijtihad aspect, which he wasn't really mentioning it about Aisha very directly. So I just didn't want to defocus. So anyone who doesn't have such proof of going to heaven unscathed, like the 10 companions and like Aisha, they have evidence of going to heaven unscathed. That means with no torture. Then Al-Ash'ari says it's possible that Allah will forgive him. His being forgiven and pardoned is indeed possible. Wa subhanallahi wa bihamdi. And now, inshallah, we completed all that we want to say about ijtihad. And next week, inshallah, we will continue. We'll continue with whatever else we have. It says here next is hesitation and doubt. Still in the book of ignorance. Do you have any question I can answer for you? There was a question here. Let me see. How about if they don't believe the proper interpretation after the lashing? So I think the answer for your question was already given. What did Umar ibn al-Khattab say? He said, Ijliduhum thamanina thamaneen. Lash them 80 times each. فَإِنْ عَادُوا, if they go back to legalizing it, فَقُتُلُوهُم, execute them. That means then they're going to be committing blasphemy because now they know what the rule is. It's confirmed for them. And what we're saying here in this particular instance is, for those who legalized that wine in this incident with Umar, the issue was indeed confirmed for them. Not talk about someone who was wrong, and then you spoke to him, and he didn't believe you. Then you're not going to call him a kafir because you didn't convince him. You're going to say, nah, I told you. Now I'm going to deem you as a kafir. No. But in the case of Umar, the reason he said execute them, because their case, for those people involved, is that the issue was clarified for them, actually. They weren't skeptical anymore about what's right. So that's why he said, if they do it again, meaning if they legalize it again, not if they drink again, if they legalize it again, then execute them for apostasy.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Concerning that issue, wasn't there a clear muhkam, clear verse explicitly forbidding alcohol?
Well, here's the ayah we said that they misunderstood. Let me pull it back up for you, so you can see how clear is it. So that's a good question.
Okay. The only reason why I'm asking that question, because I know there was like abrogated verses pertaining to drinking until, you know, the explicit verse came down and said that they're no longer that it's prohibited to drink to drink alcohol. So
Yes. So here's the ayah that they, if you can see my screen, here's the ayah that they misinterpreted. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Are you going to stop? It is explicit. It is explicit. Actually, that's what we learned. That this is explicit. But even still, somebody might not understand because it's a question. Yani, if a person understands Arabic, really, he should understand. It's saying stop. Just like if someone said to you, "Are you done?" It means stop. Doesn't mean do you want to keep going? But they didn't understand that
okay,
because of how it's posed as a question.
okay.
So that's
So
why he didn't deem them as kafir, because their misinterpretation is plausible to a degree.
so just one more question, and then I concerning this, right? Is this the last verse that was revealed about drinking? To the like finally, okay, say all right, it's prohibited. Is this the final verse of this?
This ayah right here is a piece of a longer ayah.
Okay,
So there's more statements about the prohibition of wine, but uh, those statements don't say, for example, drinking wine is forbidden. They don't say, for example, shorbul khamri haram. Drinking wine is haram, for example. That's so blatant and straightforward. It's not worded that way. So they didn't, yani, add to the fact that it used to not be haram, and then the words that they encountered weren't very more blatantly saying that it's haram. So they didn't perceive that it was actually forbidding.
gotcha. Shukran.
You're welcome.
Barakallahu feek.
I mean, wafi. But they were still sinful, though. So that's an important thing to take away from here. They were still sinful. Their ijtihad didn't protect them from a sin. It did protect them from blasphemy, though. I mean, wafi. Also, there's a statement here. This is similar to the Nasafi text. Yani, yes. Yani, Nasafi text is part of the outline that helped me to compile this information. Yani, I built on Nasafi text and some other things that complement the Nasafi text, and then built around that all these
I
extra
could,
details.
yeah, I could tell by the flow. I could tell by the flow.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك